at Singapore at the Global Anti-Scam Alliance Summit 2025. And with me today, I'm very pleased and very privileged to have Paul all the way from the United States, who's going to be sharing with us on the latest on cyber extortion. So thank you, Paul, for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Paul, yesterday at your session, at your presentation, you talked about this cyber extortion threat that is where the criminals are targeting minors. And the trend that you saw in your research report, you highlighted approximately about 1,000 times increase from the 2021 to 2023-24.
Yeah.
So from less than 150 around cases to more than
26,000 cases.
26,000 cases, right. So do we know of any sort of online behavior or digital literacy sort of traits that makes all these cyber criminals targeting the minors? Why are they attracting these cyber criminals?
Yeah, so you make a great point that the crime of financially motivated sexual extortion has absolutely exploded over the past couple of years, just from 139 reported cases back in 2021 to over 26,000 cases in 2023 and 36,000 cases in 2024. That's just in the US, but we're seeing this explode across multiple countries now, even in the Asia-Pacific region. And what we're seeing is, this is largely being driven by cyber criminals on social media platforms targeting these minors. Particularly what we see in a lot of these financially motivated cases of sexual extortion, they're targeting minor boys and they are getting them into a compromising scenario and ultimately blackmailing them for money.
So in these situations that you saw, what happened is that the cyber criminals will engage with these minors on different type of platforms. We'll get into that. And then eventually they build out this trust, this relationship with the minors, and kind of influence or manipulate them into sending photographs of themselves. And at which point then they will say, okay, if you do not pay us a certain amount of money, we'll release these intimate photos. Is that what happened?
That's exactly right. So this scam can start on any social media platform, different gaming platforms as well. But what we're really seeing is a lot of this is happening on Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, some of the most popular platforms that are out there. And these cyber criminals have found that they can just flood friend requests into minors and schools and sports teams, and oftentimes these kids will accept those friend requests. And exactly like you mentioned, these conversations start out very normal. The criminals, they go through a process of grooming the victim, essentially, in a very rapid pace environment. It turns flirtatious very quickly, and ultimately that's when, the criminals themselves will, of course, they're pretending to be a young, attractive woman or young, attractive boy online, and usually it's they're pretending to be a woman and targeting the boys. They will send a photo of the person they're pretending to be and demand or request that the target reciprocate with their own compromising photograph. And as soon as that happens, that's when the blackmail begins. These criminals will threaten to leak the photos, ruin the kid's life, get them expelled from school. Really just all these different threats layered on incredibly quickly for one goal: to induce a state of panic in that victim so that they don't know what to do, they don't know who they can go to for help, and the criminal proposes the solution. I can make this all go away if you pay me $1,000 or $300 right now.
So do you know, on average, how long is this grooming process on average that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, what's incredibly shocking about this is these cases are moving incredibly quickly. We're talking about the span of 30 minutes, a couple of hours. Very rarely are these extended into multiple weeks of grooming. We just aren't seeing that. These criminals are able to groom the victims in the process of sometimes hours, sometimes a day or two, before they finally ask for that intimate photo. And right now, it's working for them.
So what is it about these minor boys, right? And you're saying it's not just in Western countries, it's also in Asia Pacific. What is it about these demographic that is attracting the criminals to do these youngsters?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is, across all regions, more than 90% of the victims of financial sextortion are boys and young men. That's a very specific demographic.
Yep.
And, why aren't they targeting girls? Why aren't they targeting females? Why are they targeting the boys? And I've heard different explanations for that, but the one that makes the most sense to me is that, girls and females, the first day that they're on social media, day one from when they've been online, they have a history. They know what it's like to be targeted with unwanted sexual advances. And, girls and young women, they know the red flags. They've been targeted many, many times online. And I think what we're seeing here is boys have not been targeted traditionally in this way before, which is really a complete reversal of what we've seen in the field of child sexual exploitation, where historically most of the victims are girls. So it's been a complete reversal. The victims who are being targeted now don't think that they can be targeted in this sort of crime scheme, which in fact kind of makes them the most vulnerable victim.
Right, and there's a few sort of tragic consequences that you highlighted as well. But before we get into that, you also looked into a specific cyber criminal gang that's behind this cyber extortion called the Yahoo Boys. Can you tell us a bit about their history and why they pivot to this scam?
Yeah, so the Yahoo Boys are a distributed group of cyber scammers, essentially. They are not very technical, but they run all those fake accounts that you see on Facebook. They run the fake accounts you see on different social media platforms. The Yahoo Boys, actually, we may know them. Many of the audience may recognize them from about 20 years ago when they were very popular and famous for running those Nigerian Prince email scams, where they say that they're a Nigerian prince, they're going to give you some of their inheritance, but you need to pay a fee to release the money from the bank. And of course, they've moved on from that email scam. They've moved on to crypto scams. They've moved on to celebrity impersonation scams on various social media platforms. And where they are right now, they have found out that they can make a lot of money very quickly by doing what they call the blackmail scam, but we know it as financially motivated sextortion.
Right, and financial motivation is not the only motivation, is it? There's also other motivations possibly behind the scams.
Well, there's three different types of sextortion. The first one is more of the traditional sexually motivated sextortion, where criminals, they blackmail victims for more photos, more content, more videos for their own sexual gratification. Now, the threat actors behind that category, those are the predators, those are the pedophiles, those are the sexually motivated criminals. In the second category that we're seeing the huge spike in right now is the financially motivated. And these are overseas criminals, typically operating out of West Africa. We're also seeing some groups out of the Philippines. But the Yahoo Boys, they primarily are located in Nigeria. So we're seeing a large nexus of these financially motivated cases come from that region of the world. The third category of sexual extortion is kind of, I think, the more extreme version of this, and it's sadistic sextortion. These are a different type of criminal group altogether. Their motivation is simply to see the world burn. These are groups that are anarchist. They, just want to do harm to as many people as they can, and they use sexual blackmail, this coercion, this grooming, and as soon as they get that leverage, then they'll coerce their victims to commit crimes, abuse family members, just really gross
Destruction,
yes,
basically.
exactly.
That's what they're looking for.
Right,
okay. You talked about how some of these cyber criminals are sharing their techniques and tactics on Telegram channels, on a few other social media platforms.
Right.
Looking at the business model, you just talked about, a big portion of them are financially motivated. So what is driving them to share some of these tactics and techniques freely with their competitors, if I may use that word?
Right, yeah, that's a great question. So what they'll do is they share these materials out in, I was shocked to see public Facebook groups about Yahoo blackmailing format, where these Yahoo Boy criminals were 10,000 of them in some of these Facebook groups where they were openly sharing, how to commit sextortion, the different scripts to use to groom the victims. They were providing the catfish images, the fake accounts to use. And the reason for that is they're actively recruiting other scammers to conspire with them. And basically they view that as what they call a hustle kingdom, is where they, get together as many scammers as they can. The one who's in charge is kind of called the boss, and he runs the money of the operation. And it's just a different way for them to scale up, have more of the chatters. Chatters are the ones with the fake social media accounts, trying to like chat with the victims. And eventually when it comes time to the blackmail and the paying, that's when the boss steps in and tries to get that payment.
Right. So it's like kind of they're trying to run it as a corporate entity. So you have different departments, one looking after, I guess, money laundering, taking in the funds, one looking after the grooming side of things. So they're trying to make it more structured and more organized. But it's essentially organized crime, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely has elements of organized crime and disorganized crime. So there's no leader or CEO of the Yahoo Boys, but they're very dispersed, distributed, and they create their own kind of networks of scams. And, one of the cases that I talk about is the tragic case of Jordan DeMay. He was targeted, he was a 17-year-old in Michigan. He was targeted in a financial sextortion scheme. He was targeted, at 11 p.m. one night. He got these Instagram messages from who he thought was a girl his age. And it started out like a normal conversation, then it turned flirtatious. And then that girl, so he thought, sent a compromising photo and requested that he do the same. And the moment that happened, that's when the blackmail began. They demanded $1,000 from Jordan. He didn't have it. He sent them everything that he had. It was about $300. And those criminals kept demanding more and more and more. And they were threatening to leak the photos. They were threatening to make false accusations against him. They were threatening to get him kicked off of sports teams and expelled from school. Just really, if you're a kid, those are some tragic, life-altering
They
threats.
just keep escalating the threats, don't they, until something happens.
Exactly. So he gave everything that he had, and unfortunately, within a span of 6 hours, Jordan had unfortunately taken his own life. He saw no other way out of this desperate situation. And to your point, it wasn't that young, attractive girl on the other side of the phone. It was actually 6 different scammers working together within that same room. One of them was Googling about Jordan's school and his home and his friends to, show that they know all the information they can about him. Another one was doing the threatening messages to him. Another one was managing the financial accounts. So it really is, has lots of elements of organized crime.
So has this particular group been caught and identified, arrested?
Well, 3 out of those 6 have been caught and arrested, but here's the thing. It's not just these 6 criminals that are the Yahoo Boys. There's tens of thousands of criminals in this part of the world who identify as Yahoo Boys. It's honestly more of a subculture than anything, where, they get famous by doing these scams and showing off the wealth, the gift cards that they're getting online. And for example, one of these sextorters that we are tracking right now just recently purchased a BMW in Lagos, Nigeria, big fancy car, and he's openly bragging about it on his social media platforms that he has earned this money by blackmailing young people.
It's difficult for, say, for example, for the different countries where the victims are from to come together to say, we want to take down, this gang, isn't it? Because really the question is, who owns this scam? Who owns this crime, right? So you really need different countries to come together and say, okay, we want to take this down. But sometimes even the legislation does not permit that kind of cross-border sort of extradition and prosecution.
Yeah, it really is difficult because these are overseas criminals committing these crimes, and it's so hard in many cases for law enforcement to first even investigate and apprehend the perpetrator, and secondly, even if they do find out who it is, there may or may not be extradition available for that country. So unfortunately, a lot of the criminals are just getting away with it right now.
Yeah, the other thing that when you mentioned about Jordan getting when he was first recruited, if I may use the word. That was about 11 p.m. at night, right, when he got the first message. And even, I'm just thinking, putting myself in the shoes of these youngsters, right? If I get kind of these kind of messages and I come to this point where I have been threatened or blackmailed, it's early hours of the day, of the night. It's not possible for me to wake up my parents and say, what do I do, right? Even if I have that kind of open communication with my parents. So that kind of timing is also very, the criminals are very, very savvy to target that specific time of the day to target these youngsters, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, most of these cases are happening in bedrooms overnight, and the parents have no idea what has been happening.
Yeah, it's really sad. I do want to touch on the technology behind these scams. So one is, of course, cryptocurrency. I guess is one enabler of this scam. The other is social media platforms, right? And then the third is AI, right? So cryptocurrency. How many cases have you seen involve cryptocurrencies, or are they mainly around gift cards or cash?
We see a lot of the payments happen through crypto. We see a lot of them happen through gift card payments, where they demand a victim just purchase a gift card online and then send the redeem code via message back to the criminal, and the criminal will redeem it on their end. Also seeing a lot of this happening on like peer-to-peer payment platforms like PayPal, like Cash App. So it's really across the gamut, and these criminals will they have accounts everywhere, so they will accept any sort of payment, and they've really turned it into a business.
And social media, you mentioned, the ones that we know that, teenagers and youngsters like to use, of course, are Snapchat and Instagram and also TikTok. And these are also exploited by the criminals for their own malicious campaign.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So this crime often takes place on multiple apps, not just one app. And, what we see most often is these criminals will target victims on Instagram, for example. And on Instagram, there's actually really a privacy vulnerability that they exploit here. And it's the fact that as soon as a teen accepts a scammer's or a fake account's friend request or follow request on Instagram, their entire social network is exposed. You can see anyone's Instagram complete followers list, friends list. They can search those lists to find people with the same last name. So now they know all of your family members. And, that just seems to me like a massive privacy vulnerability. And of course, the criminals are exploiting that. They take screenshots of those friends and followers, the people with the same last name, who they assume is your family. And that's part of the blackmail and leverage that they use. The criminals will say, don't block me, because if you block me, I have all of your friends, I have your family, all their contact information right here, ready to send it to them. So that's incredibly a large amount of leverage right off the bat. And secondly, we see these criminals often try to take the victims to Snapchat before the photo exchange, or in order to make the photo exchange happen. Teens and young people, they perceive Snapchat to be all about the disappearing photos. So, they think it's a less risky way to share intimate images. They think they're making a safer decision to exchange those photos on apps like Snapchat. Now, unfortunately, the criminals have found ways to surreptitiously screen record and copy these images and save these images that the targets, the kids, are sending back. And that's, of course, the leverage that they use to blackmail them.
Right. And you talked about some of the progress that some of these social media platforms are adopting, right, to mitigate some of these threats. Can you share with us what you've seen?
Sure. There's some progress, but I really, really wish there was more progress happening. I commend Snapchat for some of the updates that they've made. For example, in the past, it would be that if you blocked someone on Snapchat, that criminal could easily come back to you from a different account on the same device and try to harass you via that account. Now, what Snapchat has done is now if a teen especially blocks or reports someone, what they'll do is they'll not only block that account, but also any other accounts on that same device or any accounts that device creates in the short period of time. So a more robust blocking system, I think, has been very helpful. Just to stop that harassment from happening.
Right, okay. So we talked about social media platforms, and we talked about cryptocurrency and peer-to-peer payment rails. AI, right?
Yeah.
Of course, there are deepfakes and voice clones that has been exploited by cyber criminals. But would you say that the teenagers or the youngsters nowadays are more savvy now? We kind of all know, how susceptible, people can be to deepfakes. So there's a certain skepticism, I guess, growing amongst this generation that say, okay, maybe I'm talking to a bot or something. Do you think that's happening, or?
Well, I think too the criminals have found ways to explain it away. When there's inconsistencies in their story, the criminals have an explanation for everything and they make it sound legitimate. And in fact, AI has actually been more harmful, I think, in some of these cases. For example, if a victim is being targeted and, someone is sending them photos, let's say that victim or that target, they aren't a victim yet, but they're being targeted. What if they have a suspicion that, oh, maybe this is a catfish, maybe this isn't a real person I'm talking to? And these victims I've seen cases where they say, can you send me a thumbs up selfie? Can you send me a peace sign selfie? And the criminals will take the same images that they've been using, the girl that they're impersonating, put them into an AI system, and now they're able to generate, here's that same girl with a thumbs up or with the peace sign. So in fact, it's actually making them even more convincing of fake accounts. Now here's the other scary part of AI in this whole equation. What we're talking about now has been the victims have been coerced into actually sharing their own image and then blackmailed with that image. In some cases, we're actually seeing the victims, the targets, are making the correct decision to not send the nude photo.
Yep.
But the criminals generate one anyway, using one of their regular Instagram photos. And then they try to blackmail the victim in that way, saying, I'm going to release this embarrassing photo of you. And the victims, they don't know if people will believe them when they say, oh, this isn't real, this isn't me.
Yeah. So what do you think needs to happen to instill, some level of confidence in these youngsters? I know they are at a very vulnerable age, right? There's a lot of things that we can do as parents, as friends, as neighbors, as mentors, right? What can we as adults do to help these youngsters to, maintain that kind of communication channel, to give them, that confidence that they can come to us and not be shameful about things that happen to them, and they can open up to us?
Yeah, well, that's exactly the right question that we need to be asking. Is right now, I think every parent everywhere is having that conversation. Never send a nude photo. Don't take photos like that. Don't talk to people you don't know online. But I think, to your point, there needs to be a part 2 of that conversation that includes the, when this happens or if this happens, this is what you can do. You can come to us. We won't be mad at you. We'll be on your side. I think
right,
they need
yeah.
that reassurance that, the victim, the child, is not to blame. And these criminals, what they do is they find the way to blame the child. They make it so that they think, the kids think that they can't even go to their parents when this happens.
Right.
So to preempt that with the conversation, hey, this is a scam that's happening. This may try to target you. In fact, I think likelihood, yes, this scam will target every young male and probably also female online. So it's not a matter of if it happens, but when it happens. And I think just having that part 2 of the conversation, when it happens, come to us, we won't be mad. If you make a mistake, if you send a photo to someone and it's not who they say they are, we'll fix it. Just come to us. And
I think that's so important, the part 2 of the conversation, like you say, the action, what we can actually concretely do, right, when that incident actually materializes.
Right. We can go into some of those steps of what to do when this does happen.
Yes.
If you or someone is a victim of this sort of crime, first, just stop all communication with the scammer. Do not pay them. They may negotiate down from $1,000 down to $30, and you may think, that's a good deal. I'll pay $30 to have my life not be ruined. Unfortunately, the money doesn't stop there. They'll try to get you in at a very low amount, and that's how the criminals get their hooks in, because now they know that victim is willing to pay to prevent the release of their images. So the good news here is that the criminals oftentimes don't ever release these images. 90% of the time, there's never any leakage that happens. And I think it's important for victims to know that the criminal, that's not their intent. The criminal's intent is to just get money and move on. So block them, do not pay them, stop all communication, then report them to the social media platform, report them to law enforcement, report it to your parents, talk to somebody about it. Then, once you report the account or once you block the account, like I mentioned, the criminals will try to come back from other accounts to continue the harassment. So there's two options. Number one, deactivate all social media for a couple of weeks and they'll forget about you. The criminals will eventually move on. Or you can, a lot of teens are very resistant to the idea of deactivating their social media because that's where all their friends are. The alternative is after you block the criminal, change your username, change your display name, and change your profile picture. That will make it virtually impossible for the scammers to come back and try to target you from a different account. They won't be able to search for you.
A lot of it is about awareness, not just for the potential victims, but also the friends of the potential victims, right? To let them know that, hey, if you see some of these images coming from, your friend's account, don't believe everything that you see, for example, or don't shame your friend, or don't, right?
Just be a good friend. These, they were the victim of a crime. If these photos do get leaked. And, honestly, even if the images do get leaked, it's not the end of the world. There are actually tools out there nowadays. One of them is called Take It Down. That's supported by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And what that tool does is it actually prevents those images from being shared or uploaded onto social media platforms. And all the victim needs to do is hash that image. It gives it a unique code, basically like a fingerprint for that image. And all the big social media platforms, they have a way to block those fingerprints from being uploaded onto their social media sites.
So that's before you send the image to the criminal.
That would be after the fact.
Oh, after.
So yes.
Right. Okay.
If it turns out where they are actually leaking the photos or a photo has gotten out there, which I will emphasize again is uncommon, but in that scenario, even if it does, right, you can get a hash value of that photo. It'll take it down from the social media platforms and it'll prevent it from being re-uploaded there too.
There's some form of comfort to the potential victims, isn't it?
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So you talk about cases where it's very rare for the criminals to actually leak the photos, right? What about cases where, the victims do not pay money? So you are saying that the photos seldom get leaked and then the conversation just dies off.
Correct. Yeah, most of the time that's the case. So
Right.
if the victim doesn't pay and they block, they don't reply, they ghost the criminal, that's all the things they should do, the criminal will simply just move on to the next target. The criminal has no real intent to leak those photos or get revenge. In fact, that's bad for their business because what it means is their social media accounts will get banned. They lose their leverage. The victim, they gain a support system. So those are all bad things for the criminal. So in fact, what they'll do is they'll just simply go on to the next person on that friends list. They'll go simply move on to target the next person. And that's why it's best to just let them forget about you.
Right.
Let them move on.
Right. So it's good for, for them to know, potential victims to know that, you don't always have to, you don't have to pay.
Yeah, and you
it's
shouldn't
like a
pay.
ransomware sort of scenario, isn't it? Do not pay.
Exactly. Don't pay.
Yeah, don't pay. Okay. There's also this fake recovery scam that you mentioned in your report as well. So what does that entail and why is it fake?
Yeah, so this is actually, another scam that gets added on after a sextortion scam. And we see this a lot with different types of scams where there will be the helpers that come to you to reach out and they'll say things like, I can help you get your crypto back, or I can help you delete the photos, or I can hack the scammer's device for you. All these different promises and guarantees. In fact, it's just another scam again.
Right.
Don't believe them, completely ignore them. It's just another continuation to re-victimize these victims again.
Right, and then there's also scenarios where the cyber criminals will potentially also say, right, you don't have the money to pay, but you can repay us in kind, in other forms, I guess.
Yeah, we've seen scenarios where these criminals, if they can't get money, they'll even sometimes demand the victim hand over their social media account. That's how they kind of have a cycle where they can get new accounts, accounts that already have a bunch of friends, accounts that have been active on the platform for 10 years. And when you see an account like that, friending you and messaging you, you think it's a real person. They've been on the platform for 10 years. They have hundreds of friends already. It doesn't look like a fake account because it's not a fake account. And these victims will, sometimes have to give those up. Additionally, we'll even see some of these criminals tell the victims, like, you need to give me your parents' credit card information, or steal from them, or steal from a convenience store. Just really terrible things.
I think we can go into this in more details, but I would like to end the podcast on a more optimistic, brighter
Sure.
note, right? So what have you seen so far that it's really gives you the sense that we are working to combat this issue?
Yeah, and I think that has to do with the setting where we're at today. Conferences and events and gatherings of folks here at the Global Anti-Scam Summit, number of different agencies working together. We're seeing some arrests starting to be made in these cases, which is very encouraging. So we're definitely trending in the right direction. That gives me hope. And the fact that we're able to raise awareness and have conversations like this, that's the most important thing, is just getting ahead of the scam before that scenario happens.
Yeah, so on that note, thank you so much, Paul, for sharing some of this research that you are conducting with your team on this very important issue.
Thank
so
you.
by spreading awareness about this very important threat to not just our peer group, but also the youngsters out there.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.